The legislative process. It's a slow, laborious process. It takes a long time to get legislation passed in this country, and often a bill never looks exactly like it did when it was presented in the hopper or on the floor of the Senate. But that's okay. The founders wanted the legislative process to be complicated as a means to prevent hasty decisions and encourage compromise amongst legislators. So no one legislator could introduce a bill that would take the rights away of the minority or infringe on the rights of the majority without a lot of people having a say. The first step is a bill is introduced. Okay. The bills are proposed to address a problem. So a bill is essentially a solution. Once that solution becomes law, then we can start to enforce the solution to the problem. In the House, legislation can be introduced in the hopper. In the Senate, legislation is introduced on the floor. In the House, a single member or a small group can introduce a piece of legislation. So you have sponsors or co-sponsors. Same thing in the Senate. So a bill can have a sponsor or a co-sponsor. A Congress member can introduce a bill on behalf of the president, an interest group, or their constituents, but it is imperative that you know that legislation can only be introduced on the floor or in the hopper by a congressperson. Tax or revenue bills must be introduced in the House. And again, constituents, the presidents, and interest groups can only suggest them. Once they are introduced, they are numbered. And they're numbered with either the House or the Senate or HR or an S, and the session number and the number of the legislation that is being passed. As many as 10,000 bills are introduced every year, but few actually make it through. Once it's introduced, it is assigned to a committee. Again, in the House of Representatives, this is when the Speaker, and the Speaker of the House is from the majority party, can kill or assist a bill depending on which committee it is assigned to for markup in writing. If the Speaker wants to kill a bill, then they'll assign it to a committee that they know won't work on it. The majority leader gets to assign the bill to a committee in the Senate. Okay, again, the power of the Speaker, it was a referral decision. If they want the bill to die, they'll give it to a committee that they know will not work on it. If they want the bill to live, they will give it to a committee that will make that piece of legislation thrive. Second, committee action. Both the Senate and the House have committees. Again, committees are specialized groups that work on legislation. This is when the markup process happens. The markup process is when a bill is written and revised. It's like writing the rough draft of your research paper. The markup process is done in subcommittees. Subcommittees hold hearings. Hearings are essentially the research process. They sift through evidence that is given to them by interest groups, and they help that form their bill. And they also listen to testimony. Government agencies may testify to protect their interest in the hearing process. Subcommittees really determine how money will be spent. So subcommittees also perform studies on the contents of the bill and how much that bill will cost the United States government. Usually a lot of the research is done by committee staffers. Trying to think of anything else. Again, this is the best situation where interest groups can give technical information that is very valuable to the bill writing process. Now, after the subcommittee is done with the markup process and the hearing process, the bill goes back to committee for consideration. The committee, as the group in the committee, can add informal amendments. This is anything that's additional to the work the subcommittee did. Adding and subtracting content to a bill can reflect the committee members' needs. So if I work on the Appropriations Committee, or better yet, if I work on the Agricultural Committee and there was a bill that was dealing with pesticide use, and I didn't necessarily care about pesticide use, but I cared about paying for subsidies for farmers and giving them extra money to produce milk for dairy farms, then I can add an informal amendment to the pesticide bill dealing with dairy farms. Now, at this point, the committee can kill a bill or decide not to recommend it for further consideration or action. Most bills die in committee. Sometimes you could recommend the bill for further action. If you are a committee and you are not allowing a bill to go for further action and you're trying to kill it within committee, one thing that you must look out for is a discharge petition. A discharge petition is a vote. It's a means of bringing a bill out of committee to the floor for debate. It is done by members of the House to usurp power from leadership and committee chairs. So if the committee chairs are trying not to release the bill and the leadership isn't forcing them, you can hold a vote in the House of Representatives to have a discharge petition, and then in the discharge petition they could force a bill out of the cold, dead hands of the committee, and then action can be taken on that piece of legislation. The Senate only. Now, once the committee has recommended it for further action, which, by the way, is the committee report, the Senate leadership places it on the calendar. But if it's in the House of Representatives, it doesn't go on the calendar. If it's in the House of Representatives, it goes to the House Rules Committee. This is in the House only. The House sets the rules. Remember, the Speaker has a lot of influence over this committee. Okay. One thing the House Rules Committee determines is whether a bill will be able to be debated. If it is debated, what will the time restriction be for each individual House of Representatives member? Or will it even be able to be debated at all? They will determine if it is closed or open for amendments. If it's closed for amendments, individual representatives, when debating, will not be able to add anything additional onto the bill. The bill has to go through as is. If it is open for amendments, then House of Representatives members can suggest amendments to the bill, but they must be relevant to the piece of legislation that is being discussed. If you are going to debate the bill, you have to make sure it is relevant. If a bill is allowed to be debated, that can be a good thing. It could be a good thing for the opposition or the supporters of the bill. You can bring attention to your cause. You can talk about the evils or the merits of the bill. If a bill is allowed to be debated, though it can only be debated for a limited amount of time. Amendments can be a killer. By allowing the opposition to add so many amendments, it doesn't even look like the same piece of legislation. So if Democrats want to control the sale of handguns, the Republicans can add killer amendments to the bill that include cuts to education or welfare and try to make it relevant to gun control. And if the Democrats don't like that, then they can't even vote for the bill that they essentially wanted. All amendments, though, have to have germaneness. It has to be relevant to the bill's original policy. If it's not germane, then it can't be added or talked about in the House of Representatives only. Now, once the House Rules Committee has their way with it, and they decide whether it be debated and be amendable, it's going to go to the floor. But remember, it's already on the floor in the Senate. Okay, in the Senate, there are a few things that you have. Okay, we'll talk about, oops, I wanted to go back. Okay, unanimous consent. I have this in red because unanimous consent is a way that senators can ease the passage of a bill. And it's when all senators just out loud kind of roll call vote on whether or not to pass a bill. So if we had a budget bill that hit the floor of the Senate and Harry Reid wanted to hurry up and get this budget bill passed to avoid a government shutdown, he could just say, senators present, vote aye or yay or nay on this piece of legislation. Okay, all senators can agree on the passage of the bill in order to avoid a government shutdown. Okay, amendments and riders. In the Senate, when you are on the floor, you can add amendments, you can add riders and earmarks. Riders are non-spending amendments that don't have anything to do with the bill. So if take that bill on pesticides, it went out of the Agricultural Committee in the Senate and now it's on the Senate floor. And I want to add something about making tolls illegal in Hampton Roads because I'm a senator from Virginia. I can add that rider. It has nothing to do with pesticide use, but I need to get that done so my constituents don't have to pay tolls. So rider is a non-spending amendment. I guess tolls is a bad example because I don't want you to get confused with spending. The government didn't have to spend any money on that. Or if there was a bill on education and I added something about alternative energy, okay, that would be a rider, nothing to do with it. Earmarks are spending amendments attached to the bill. Earmarks are also known as pork. This is where senators can bring home the bacon by funding projects that will only benefit their constituents. Remember, this is an advantage of being an incumbent. You could add pork to any piece of legislation if you're in the Senate. Adding earmarks or pork to legislation is also a way that senators can kind of steal the power of the purse because they could tack on all these kind of irrelevant spending to a piece of legislation. Okay, holds. Even though a House may pass a bill, the Senate can delay or stop a bill with a hold. So let's say that John Boehner has managed to pass a budget. It gets to the Senate doesn't like it, so instead of voting on it, they can hold it, and that'll essentially make it die. When debating on a bill, the Senate doesn't require germaneness. Okay, the Senate can add unrelated content through riders that the House doesn't like. So when the bill goes back to the House or back to conference committee, it might not go anywhere because the Senate has added irrelevant stuff to the legislation and the House might not like it. Especially in times where the House and the Senate are of opposite political parties. The Senate, you have unlimited time. You can debate a bill for an unlimited amount of time. That's called filibustering. It's making a speech on the Senate floor that continues for hours. Senators don't even filibuster anymore. All they do is threaten to filibuster. It's a strategy of the minority party. It's a delay tactic. If the minority party knows that an opposition bill will pass, it will threaten to filibuster to prevent a vote on the bill or approve it, or an approval of a nominee. They do the same thing with judicial nominees. They'll filibuster a judicial nominee so a vote can never come about. Okay. If the Senate goes into recess without a vote on the bill dies. So a lot of times the majority party doesn't even put the bill forward because they know that the minority party will filibuster. Both parties use filibuster. Here's a chart right here. Republicans are using threats of filibuster more than ever to block legislation, and this is true throughout the Obama administration. In order to stop a filibuster, you have to do a cloture motion. It takes 60 senators to shut somebody's mouth and stop them from filibustering. So that's why having 60 people in your party in the Senate is important. And last but not least is the nuclear option. The nuclear option deals with an attempt by the majority party of the Senate to get rid of filibustering altogether. And we have done that. We have employed the nuclear option. Democrats in the Senate have passed this idea, and there are no more filibusters on presidential nominations.